And we're live.
Hey everybody, Capt here with my able-bodied crew, Dieter Staudinger, Diane Hansen, and Eric Larson. Back and been a busy week. I've been traveling. Actually, the couple weeks I've been traveling, so I can confess that I've actually been out in the system and have a little bit of an idea out there. Quite a wide variance in mask usage, except on the airplanes. Everybody's still very clear about using the mask on the airplane. We didn't have anybody punch anybody or get thrown off the airplane, any of the airplanes that I was riding on, so I took that as a good thing.
It's good.
We're back here to do our Fearless Flight live show, which is for anybody who has a fear of flying or who knows someone who's afraid to fly. And the third category is just if you just like to stay up in the industry and current with what's going on out there. The first thing we always remind you, if you're not a member of the Birds of a Feather group, we certainly encourage you to do that. And join and leave us a message or leave us a remark there, and see all the wonderful people that have joined before you, and take advantage of some of their hospitality and warm wishes. We've got people that are in various stages of flying, trying to fly, and getting and flying for the first time. Tonight we're gonna remind one more about the 101 classes we got coming up. We got the online class, the live class coming up this Saturday night, June 5th at the Phoenix Airport. Diane and Eric will, and we're looking forward to that again. That's the second one since we've resumed the classes. And then we've got the new 101 online version that will be on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock time. So we hope that you can do one or both of them if you want. We'll talk a little bit about anticipatory anxiety. That's always a big, very popular topic with people. We have just a couple of aviation news updates and the Q&A. Actually, we do the Q&A before the news update typically. So with that, let's get into it. We had a poll question tonight, since that's been a theme in the last couple of months that I've started working with people who are afraid to fly again with the coaching sessions, both paid and free. Anticipatory anxiety is so we just thought we'd throw that out here and see what percentage of you have anxiety as a big problem at this stage. So just leave us a yes or no. If you're live, if you're watching the replay, feel free to also leave your or down there with us. So okay, quick reminder again for the 101 class, that is the in-person class, we call it now. That's going to be this coming Saturday, June 5th at the Phoenix Airport. If you haven't registered, please consider going over and doing that. If you're going to be in anywhere near the Phoenix area this Saturday night, there's the link on the screen, and I think Dieter is or will put that in the notes as well. And
it's
then
already in the chat.
The new one we're going to do for the first time, I'm really in the chat. Perfect. And the new one that we're doing is the online version on the following day, June 6th, 11 o'clock Pacific time. So join us. Anybody can join us. It's, we have, if you recall, a few weeks ago, I did the interview with Paul Kirkland, and Paul came to the class, drove down to the class in person for a year before he got back into flying. So we love it. Just keep coming back as long as you need to. So, okay. All right. Let's talk hopefully quickly about anticipatory anxiety. First thing I did was that this is what gets everybody, and it's nothing more than a fear of what you're going to experience. And you've heard me talk about the amygdala being our smoke detector, and the fact that it is it warns us about things, and we make the analogy to a toaster. It doesn't know whether the threat is real or imagined. And anticipatory anxiety is the manifestation of an imagined threat. So the definition is that it's the anxiety we experience in anticipation of exposure to whatever it is that's going to trigger us. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. one of the things about anticipatory anxiety is that it's paradoxical. And in our attempts to avoid the anxiety is what actually makes it stronger. And you can watch people when you're talking with them, or I get people that will call me and tell me they've got a flight coming up, or they're at the airport, and the closer they get to the actual event, the more amped up they get over that. And you see there's just a little schematic there that anticipatory anxiety leads to anxiety and panic and then more in the thoughts, and it just turns into a vicious circle. But we feel like we are avoiding in order to reduce anxiety. But the truth is that the more we anticipate our fear, the greater it becomes. Some facts about anticipatory anxiety. It's not a predictor of how much anxiety you will actually feel in the situation. So that's one of the downsides to it, one of the many downsides. And it's often much greater than the anxiety we experience when we actually make contact with that which frightens us. In fact, it's estimated that about 95% of the time, whatever we worry and think about is far greater than the actual event itself. And it turns out to be counterintuitive. So here's an example. Suppose you're afraid to fly, and despite these fears, you schedule yourself to fly in a week, let's say, and you imagine yourself flying. When you imagine yourself flying, you think catastrophic thoughts about the flight, and your anticipatory anxiety soars in such things as being trapped or cooped up in the airplane, or how bad turbulence is going to be. You think to yourself, here I am a week before the flight, and I'm just thinking about the flight in the comfort of my living room brings my anxiety up to an incredible level. And if I'm that anxious just thinking about it, imagine how freaked out I'm going to be when I actually do it. I have to cancel that flight. And that's why you have to do the work before you put yourself into that situation. And what do we say the work is? The work is educating yourself about fear of flying, learning how to disrupt or distract your thinking, and then social connection. And that's what all of you are engaged in tonight, socially connecting yourself to us and to others by virtue of joining our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. The next thing is more facts. Go ahead.
I just got to interject for a second. Sorry. If they'd use that diagram on our medicals for the colorblind test and then ask people how many blue marbles there were in the picture, I think they would have caught a lot more guys.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for people who would memorize the colorblind. Okay, I'm done, maybe.
That was helpful. Thank you, Eric. That was helpful.
Good. That was really helpful.
Hey, well, my internet connection is unstable, so I'm not going to be in on many of your jokes, Eric. But just keep keeping
them. That's okay. You don't need to be.
So, all right. Yeah. Right. You said it, Diane. Not me. By the way, Diane and I are both on the road tonight. Diane's up in Oregon, and I'm out in Lexington, Kentucky, mooching off my good friends of over 50 years here. The occasion was to visit them. However, a little bit of sadness because I have a friend who has glioblastoma, and it's not the kind of thing that has a good ending for him. So anyway. Back to anticipatory anxiety. Facts. Anticipatory anxiety gets it all wrong in that the majority of anxiety occurs at the beginning of a situation. And you've heard us talk about the fact that if you can get through the first few minutes of flight, it's usually downhill from there. In that is a positive notion. If you can get through that initial surge, you're well above 80% of through 80% of the discomfort for the rest of your flight. And the best thing about that is that's the major therapeutic benefit of enduring what we call exposure therapy. The main recovery to fear of flying is through exposure therapy, where you actually have the opportunity to go through the anxiety to get to the other side. Few anticipatory anxiety and situational anxiety. The difference between the two is anticipatory anxiety is what you think that is going to befall you, and situational anxiety is when you're actually in that. So you can have anticipatory anxiety about thinking about being closed up in the airplane, about thinking about the magnitude and the severity of the turbulence. And then situational anxiety is once you're actually in those situations. And the point is that the anticipation is far worse than the actual experience in the situations. So that's the hard thing. And there's some interesting things. Many of you ask me about, should we take medications? Well, the problem with medications is that they deal with the two types of anxiety in significantly different ways. So SSRIs, for example, reduce panic, phobic, and obsessional thinking, but have little effect on anticipatory anxiety. So that means that the SSRIs are not going to help you much before you get on the airplane. And then when you get into the other part, the biodiazepines, and that's the Valium, Xanax, Klonopin, those kinds of medications, they can reduce the anticipatory anxiety, but have relatively little impact on the panic, the phobias, and the obsessive thinking, except at high doses. And that's why many of you who have elected not to take medication, because you had to take such a great dose that you got, basically you felt like you were drunk once you got to your destination. And some people it took a day or two to wear off. And of course, if you get a business trip, that's usually counterproductive for that. And the last thing I'd like to talk about, or want to mention about, is anticipatory anxiety. It's quick to appear and slow to go away. I like to think it's like me trying to maintain fitness as I get older. You know, it takes me 6 years to get in shape and then 6 minutes to lose it when I don't do it on a regular basis. And so anticipatory anxiety shares some of that frustration, because it is quick to show up, and it does take a long time to go away. And that's because your biology gets triggered. And once your biology gets triggered, you get the sweaty palms, the rapid heart rate, and the like. Then it helps to sustain that. And now you start thinking about all those sensations that you have, and it keeps you immersed in that anxiety or anxious state there. Here's an example of something about the difference between the two. So driving over a bridge, for example, for people, there a lot of fearful flyers, ironically, have fears of going over bridges, the height, the fact that you can't get off the bridge when you want to, and things like that. So it seems to be a common thread between that and fear of flying. So imagine going over a bridge like the bridges in some of the major cities on the West Coast. I'm thinking San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, for example, the Oakland Bay Bridge, and things like that. And during rush hour, and I was reading a story about a guy riding with his therapist and trying to expose him to the sensations. And as they got in traffic, he was just getting crazier and crazier and crazier, because they were just stuck in traffic, and it was obvious that they were not going to get out in much of time. So that's the situational part. So the anticipation was worrying about what he's going to feel like when he gets on the bridge. But once he got on the bridge and he could look up ahead and see all the red brake lights on there, he actually calmed down until he looked over in the lane that was going in the other direction. And then he reminded him, crap, he's got to turn around and go back. So that's a great example of how we vacillate. You can be in flight after the takeoff and all that, if that bothers you, calm down a little bit, and then you get a little bump of turbulence, and now that upsets your apple cart. Not the fact that you just survived the turbulence, but the fact that now you're thinking about, is it going to come back? It was that, waiting for the next shoe to drop. So it's quick to appear and slow to go away for those reasons, because we kind of self-perpetuate it. And anticipatory anxiety gets you coming and going, meaning that it increases with indecision. So committing to either go forth and fly or stay and not fly provides relief. Bailing, should you decide not to fly, we mentioned the fact before that when you decide not to fly, there is an element of relief, and it's biological in nature as well. So the instant you decide to get off the airplane or turn around and go home, you now experience that relief. You get the dopamine transfer and all that, and so now it makes it harder to do it the next time. That's why committing is so important to people who are afraid to fly, and saying, I'm gonna, doing the work ahead of time with us, using the Fearless Flight Kit, using, coaching, counseling, whatever you need to do, and helping yourself to educate yourself so that now you have some tools, and the tools mainly are ways to build up your confidence that you're going to be okay, so that when you get on the airplane, you can know right up front that you're probably going to have a period of anxiety, but it's going to be something that will go away in a very short amount of time. And so committing is really, really, really important to overcoming your fear. And once you get, I've had just a number of people that have flown in this last week, including Butch out there. Butch just sent me a nice email or a text earlier this evening. And I'd been working with him at the end of last week because he had to go back for a big family event back down in Miami. And we hope to get Butch on as a guest here in the next week or so. But he was saying the same thing. He just got so worked up prior to that time, all the way up to getting on the. Once he got on, he was able to settle back just a little bit, and once he got into that mode, it was much better for him, much easier. So let's talk about coping, and we'll close this up here. There's no easy way. I'm sorry, but it just sucks to have a fear of flying, but call it what it is. It's anticipatory anxiety, and it is very real. The threat isn't real. But the feelings that are associated with the anxiety is very real. But it's different from what you experience when you make contact with whatever frightens you. So again, the two types are anticipatory anxiety and situational anxiety. The anticipation is all the stories that you tell yourself about how bad it's going to be beforehand. And the situational anxiety is the easy part, because once you're in it, you can actually see that it's not going to manifest in the things that you were worried about. And the other thing about anticipatory anxiety is it's not an accurate indicator of how anxious you will actually be. So things to do: use medications wisely. And note that the studies show that the use of medications reduce the therapeutic effectiveness of the exposure. What that means is if you use in particular benzodiazepines, they actually dull the smoke detector of your mind, or of your brain, which is the amygdala, and so it doesn't get to experience the therapeutic benefit of experiencing the anxiety and in watching yourself master that. Commit, very important. And we have one of our favorite past fearful flyers, and he says, sooner or later, you got to get on the damn airplane. And that's the truest thing that we could tell you. You have to get on the airplane to actually go through it. So fear flying, overcoming it, is about going through your fear and not around it. And then you can use anticipatory anxiety to convert that into a learning experience to actually achieve the benefits that you've been looking for. And then in conclusion, it's simple, and yet it's complex. You have to tell yourself that despite the feelings, feeling anxious, when you book a reservation or you plan a flight, that you are confident that flying is safe and you can manage the feelings during flight. And that's what we like to think that we can help you with, or participating in the birds of a feather. It's all about the confidence that you can manage your anxiety, and you can get through that first challenging part of the flight and get through most of a majority of the discomfort that you're going to experience before that. When people text me from the air, most of them say, oh my gosh, I'm on board. I was terrified, but now it's working better. Use distraction and disruption of your attention because what happens is your amygdala hijacks your attention, and until you can get back in control of your attention, you're going to be off in never land and just imagining things that are never going to happen to you, and that helps you reduce the intensity. And the last thing is continue to engage with others. Social connection with us and with people in groups like the Birds of a Feather group are the absolute way that you can get over this. I'm gonna, if you got any questions, I don't know if we have any questions that have come up or comments or anything like that, Eric?
Well,
Eric,
actually, there's a cool comment from Kelly. Hey, Kelly, and she wrote, Butch is my friend, and I talked to his wife today, and he did better flying back. So we were just talking about, social connection. And now here, Kelly, you're watching the show and you're bringing that back in, that feedback. So that's really, that's perfect. It's just what we're talking. Yeah.
And Kelly's a great contributor. Her name's going to come up again when we do the questions here towards the end of the class.
That's always true when we do a 301 class. We do the outbound leg,
Right.
and then we do the return leg, and, and everybody's relaxed and giddy and happy, and half of the little miscreants are sleeping. That wasn't the case on the outbound legs ever.
And how many times, Eric, have we seen people literally, they'll be freaking out, get on the airplane, push back, and by the time we get airborne, we accuse them of just being there for the attention because you literally can't tell. And then when we, like you said, when we get to the destination, the first leg of the trip in the end, we have people that are like, when are we going to get on the airplane, get home? I got things to do, and it is amazing. It's so hard for people to believe.
They burned all the stress in one leg. They don't have any left.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I just quickly want to jump.
So Diane,
hold on, Ron. That was Shally, and I just want to quickly say that because she said, "What if I have both anxieties, or what if somebody has both anxieties?" Like the anticipatory anxiety, but then the anxiety in the moment. So, ultimately, it's the same circuitry in the brain, and practicing the tools and strategies that we're teaching and that you're learning here, and maybe that you pick up along the way, will already teach you to bring yourself into that space by command rather than just by accident. And the harmonizer is a great tool to reinforce that on a deep level.
Yeah, and that's where the distraction and disruption comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I coach people or people watch the show, and most of them will report their level of anxiety goes down because they're in the moment. That's the whole thing about being mindful, is you bring yourself into the moment, and there is no threat, right? And it's just when you allow, or our mind has a habit of going to the future, that's when anticipatory anxiety rears its ugly head. So,
Ron, there's a question for you actually. How do you feel about vagal braking by thinking of thoughts that produce oxytocin naturally? So the question is just, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, vagal braking comes from the connection to the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's it refers to the vagus nerve, and that's exactly it. So yeah, that's to some degree is why using the harmonizer or audio stimulation to reduce or to kind of override your anxious thoughts, and it effectively does do vagal braking. So yeah, absolutely. If you know how to do it, more power to you. That's that. Go with that. So, okay, Diane, you had a couple things you wanted to talk about this evening. So take the floor.
Get to the flight attendant's corner. So last week we talked about going on the things that flight attendants say and the things we do and why we say them and why we do them. And last week it was bins and bags. And our default is always, when people ask, why are we doing this? It's safety. All those things we're talking about are safety issues. And exactly the kinds of steps we take and the processes are overseen and regulated by the FAA. So we are always concerned about observing those, the flight attendants are concerned about observing those FARs, the aviation regulations, to make sure that we are following the guidelines that rule our industry as far as flight attendants. So that was bins and bags. And tonight we're just going to talk very briefly about the exit row. Those of you that are fearful flyers probably don't want to sit in the exit row. And if you have boarded early, because you have expressed to the gate agent that you are a little nervous about flying, you will not be seated in an exit row for the reasons that I'm going to talk about a little bit. For those of you who are very comfortable in flying, that's a couple of the things that we are going to always talk about as flight attendants is we're going to say, okay, you're my exit row people. Have you reviewed the passenger safety card? That's a very important thing. And we have to ask, the FAA requires that we ask 2 questions. That's the first one, have you reviewed the card? And the second one is, are you still willing and able to assist in the event of an emergency? And of course, you say it after the first 1,000 times, you do have a tendency to say it a little bit fast, but it's a very important question. And we require that you have a verbal answer, one that we can hear, because that tells us that you are comfortable with a very big responsibility of having to open the exit, the emergency exit, in the case of an emergency, because chances are neither flight attendant is going to be anywhere near that exit. I'm going to be in the aft part of the aircraft, and in my plane, the emergency exits are over the wing, and then the forward flight attendant is going to be in the forward part of the cabin. And so we are relying on those individuals in the exit row to be able to open that door in case of an emergency. And so there are certain restrictions. You have to be at least 15 years old in order to do that. You can't have certain infirmities. You have to be able to understand English, because all of our commands that we will be giving are in English. You have to be able to have the physical strength to be able to open the door and toss it out. And our doors weigh 42 pounds. Now, we all have to be able to do that as flight attendants, but it is important that the passengers there do understand what is involved. If a passenger is uncomfortable, and I had one today who was not comfortable in doing that, and we will be more than happy to reseat that individual so the passenger's not in the position to have that responsibility. This is a very, very important one. So those, I mean, there are a lot of other restrictions on that. You can't have a passenger with a cabin pet there. Obviously, we can't have anyone with children there. We can't have a parent or an adult who's responsible for anyone else on the plane. For example, we can't have mom and dad in the exit row with their children, even if they're in their early teens or 9, 10 years old, in a different row, because in case of emergency, that individual's responsibility and first thoughts will be to save their children, not to open the door. So there's a lot of other kinds of things that we have to be very aware of, that the passengers themselves might not come to the forefront of their thinking. So that's just kind of my exit row briefing, so to speak. The next one is that one that Ron alluded to. It's the 1st of June, and our airline and numerous other airlines are resuming service. There are some things that are still not being brought back. There's a couple of airlines, Southwest and American, are not selling alcohol yet, alcoholic beverages, for numerous reasons. Obviously, we talked about the unfortunate event a few weeks ago where a Southwest flight attendant was assaulted. And so some of the airlines are still restricting that particular level of service until September the 15th right now. And that's the last item, the masks. Right now, the federal government, the restriction on masks, or the mandate to wear masks, expires on the 15th of September. And so that remains to be seen if that stays in effect. But until that time, we still require, the federal government and the airlines still require you to wear a mask. The types of masks are strict. There's some that are prohibited, but we all have masks on our aircraft. So if you're wearing one that's not allowed, we can give you one. So should not be a concern. But we do still go through and make sure that all our passengers are wearing a mask. You can lower it briefly to eat or drink, and that's certainly not a problem. But we do want you all to know that that mandate is still in place. So that's kind of it for me for this evening. As Ron said, I am on the road as well. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. This is not my normal background. So I've got an early morning tomorrow. I had an early morning this morning. So this is how glamorous it gets, folks, is when you're in yet another hotel room. So.
Okay, thanks.
Well,
Diane.
thank you, Diane.
So we'll move on to the questions we had. We had some great questions come in. The first one's from Susan. She says, my most burning question about flying, I worry about turbulence. I mean, after a bumpy flight, I just want to ask the pilot if there was ever a time he was nervous, or was all of it just business as usual, and get an honest answer. So Eric.
Yes, sir.
Chief cook and liar around. No. We're going to. So when it comes to turbulence, okay, do we get scared or do we get startled?
Well, we get startled very, very briefly, but it goes away. So
I loaded the question. That wasn't fair.
Yeah, it's a load of questions. It goes away so fast, we weren't even aware that we were startled. And if she's been watching the show very long, she knows when turbulence occurs, and that's when we want to eat. And so we really aren't too concerned, except for now we don't know when we're going to be able to eat. So we're extremely annoyed and maybe using bad words. But we are not worried about the safety of the airplane plummeting, which we love to talk about, tipping over, or doing any of that horrible stuff, which is not going to happen.
Right. And like I said,
that falls.
I was just going to say,
ahead.
my only problem with turbulence is it puts me to sleep if I'm sitting in my jump seat. It's, yeah. We get startled too. I mean, it's not just you guys up front, but we get startled.
Yeah.
You know, initially.
That's why I say
Yeah.
if you look at if some people wait to look at the flight attendants, you know, that's going to be of questionable value because they get startled as well. But being startled is human. Being scared and drifting into anticipatory anxiety is what this is all about. So it'll go away, but that's the very difference between worrying about the future, how bad is it going to get, can we lose control or anything like that, versus being in the moment, in the situational moment, saying, okay, this is okay, we're doing okay, and nothing to worry about. So the next question came from Erica, and she said, I'm a nervous flyer and I'm going to be flying alone with my 3-year-old and I'm pregnant, and I'll bet you dad's got some great excuse why he can't go on the trip. So because you see that up. And she says, I'm starting to get nervous. For some reason, flying with someone I know gives me a false sense of security. So flying alone makes me more anxious. I was doing better with flying, but because I haven't flown in a while, so it almost feels like starting over. I tend to do okay on short flights because I can tell myself it'll be over soon. Again, this whole thing about the length of the flight comes up. But this is a cross-country flight, and I'm envisioning myself saying, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be in the sky for another 3 hours, and then I'll freak out and I can't get out. Any recommendations of what I should tell myself if that's my fear? I don't like when I realize how much is left and the flight and how little control I have for being stuck in the sky for hours with no ability to get down, and I want to be stronger for my daughter. Okay, well, the answer is just exactly what you said. Don't think I can't, this is going to go on forever. I don't want to be here anymore. You literally can come up with a mantra. I recommend coming up with, I may not like it right now, but it's not a threat to me. Write that down, carry a small, even just a 2.5 by 3.5 inch little spiral notebook, and write with your left hand or your non-preferred hand. So if you're right-handed, you write down the counter to that. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't mind being here because in this moment, I'm okay. And if you need to talk more about that, schedule a coaching call with me, and I'll give you a whole bunch of things like I've been giving out for the last 34 years, but particularly in the last 2 months here again. So,
hey, Ron, let me throw something in here.
So that's that. And the last one.
Ron,
Okay, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say, even though she is unhappy, focus on the pilots. They're happy to have a long flight. If it was a short flight, they'd be working furiously the whole way with a departure connecting to the arrival. Whereas a long flight, they have more options. They're up high, and smoother air longer. They're not rushed in their work, and it all pays the same. So even though she would rather be out of the airplane faster, the guys are more relaxed. I don't know if that helps her or not at all, but that's a quote unquote easier flight for the crew to make than a bunch of short ones.
For us too.
Yeah.
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 Good points.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Mike Baranowski asks, he says, I've never worn a mask for 6 hours. Anyone have difficulty breathing through the mask on a plane? Can you lift the mask off your face a little during flight to get more air? Pardon me. How do you eat or drink water with the mask on? You go to the FAA prison for not wearing a mask. Well, you can, but you're not. Diane's not going to throw the cuffs on you right away.
No.
She already explained earlier in there that you're allowed to eat and drink with your mask out of the way. And of course, I adjust my mask multiple times during the flight. The one thing I've found is getting the right mask, and I've been looking for a K95 forever. Even on Amazon, you can't get them unless you tell them that you're with an organization, and the minimum you could buy is $250. But I happen to walk into a Lowe's out here in Lexington, Kentucky, where my friends live, and I got one of these things, and it's great. And the reason I like this is because the top of the mask goes up further under my glasses on the bridge of my nose, and I don't fog over, which is one thing. And I have a little bit of airspace in between my nose, my beak, and breathing. And I find this to be much more comfortable and much more sustainable. And so the last thing is you can practice by put this thing on around the house. Like we said, practice when you're not in the middle of the threat. And see what it's like for you and get used to it. So anyway, Kelly Green says, my last flight, I got a mask that has straps that go around her head instead of around the ears. I think the ones that go over the top and
I wear those
the
all
back
the
of your neck
time.
there. So
They're
she
way
found
more-
that much more comfortable. So do a little research.
Yeah.
Yeah. So jump in the birds of the feather and see if anybody else like Kelly's out there. Ask Kelly. I should have done this, but ask Kelly where she got her mask there. So, okay, perfect. Last thing that we want to talk about here is I had this in the making, and so Fargo Curry, I've been working with Fargo a little bit, and he's kind of a clever guy. He talked third person here. Started wondering if I could ever convince Capt Moran to take a flight with me so he could experience firsthand the flight anxieties that I exhibit. Perhaps he could help me figure out the best way to help me. What do you say, Captain? Well, here's what I say. We're gonna do that. Oliver Fry is coming over from Burbank for the class in Phoenix on Saturday night. We were planning to fly. Oliver was really counting on flying earlier this year than Eric and Diane and I and Dieter have planned to return to the air. So I said, okay, I'll do it. So I was going to fly with him, and now he's had to move that to June 21st, which is the day after Father's Day. So here's the deal: if you are interested in doing that, Oliver said, how about, a couple hours coaching? So I said, okay. And so we're going to do it instead of 2 hours of coaching, we're going to do it for $297 instead of what it would have been was $400. And I'm going to do an hour webinar in the week leading up to the flight. And we're going to do it on June 21st. So if you're interested, just contact me directly, CaptainRon@FearlessFlight.com, and say in the subject line, I'd like to fly in June. Okay, so do that, and it's gonna be a very limited number. We've got a couple of people already that have expressed interest. So if you're interested in doing that, please consider that. Come and join us. I've had a lot of people say, when are we going to fly? When are we going to fly? Well, we're going to fly on the 21st, and Oliver's looking forward to it. And he's actually was hoping that we'd get some other people, because he thinks he won't feel as bad if he's not the only one with me that claims to need help. So anyway, all right. Two last things real quick, just because they fall into the category of things we always talk about. American Airlines, apparently just today, they were taxiing down there and the pilots got on the wrong line. Eric can talk about how that happens when we get the photo up there. Anyway, and they actually hit a light pole with the wing, not good, and put a dent in it. And so everybody had to get off. I think they were going to Jamaica or somewhere down the Caribbean, and went back to the gate. I can tell you that pilot is not having a great night tonight. And because that would be disastrous. So Eric, we're not in the business of speculation, but let's go ahead and speculate anyway. What do you think happened?
Right, we're not critics. However, if you look at that video which is available on all the mainstream news feeds, and Dieter had the picture up a minute ago, there's a deal we call the J line, which is because that's the way it used to angle into the gate. So we refer to all taxi lines as J lines, but the yellow paint is under his right wing. And when you're centered up on those, depending on your airplane type, which the taxi notes will tell you, that gives you clearance of fixed airplane obstacles. And he's way inside of that line, far to the left of it, not guaranteeing him obstacle clearance, and he didn't clear the obstacle, and that's what happened.
Yeah. So your brain is sitting there saying, see, I told you it was dangerous to fly. However, it doesn't count. I guess it could count if somebody got hurt or something, but we think in the air is where most of you get worried about that. But anyway, so this is just a great example of how you have to control your confirmation bias, which supports your fear by finding something which you're already afraid of, namely flying, and looking out into the environment and finding something, a confirming example or situation that will reinforce that. So don't do that.
So Ron
right?
or Eric, would you say that this is a training issue? Is it an issue of being too overworked? Is it an issue of, where would that kind of fall other than human factors?
He's definitely gonna get some more training.
It's the area. It'll probably result in him. Yep. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's definitely gonna get some more training on taxi procedures, taxi technique, and he may just been a little loose, a little cavalier about making the turn, or looking at something on his right, an aircraft on the right that he didn't like the spacing and the clearance on. So he may have gone slightly left of that to avoid the airplane and off the J line and whack the pole. Our clients are nervous flyers, and if Ron says this validates their fear, I don't know if I'm in a minority, but I was kind of a nervous taxier. It's extremely unnerving. Your airports you don't go to all the time, and there's all manner of taxiway trickery, stuff you have to pay close attention to, obstacle clearance, things like that. And I always remember when I'd get in line to get on the runway, I'd go, oh, good, we made it. No bag carts, no fuel trucks, no catering vehicles. We don't have nothing going back and forth in front of us like this. And that was always a stress relief for me to not be in that busy area near the concourses. I don't know about you, Ron.
Yeah, my guess is he was doing something different that he hadn't done in a long time, and he just saw the first line he saw came to him, and the first officer was probably felt that he didn't have to monitor that closely there because it's something they did every day. Again, my favorite saying from Stephen Covey was nothing breeds failure like success. So the more times nothing goes wrong, the more likely we are as human beings to relax. And I guarantee you, he won't ever do that again. Because it's humiliating, and it will cost him probably a few dollars in at least some training sessions or something like that. Last thing is we brought this up. The thing that was in the news, of course, a couple years ago, big time, was the 737 800 and 900 Maxes, and they have resolved that. Although if you read the article, there's still things going on in there, still making corrections to Boeing and requirements there. They got fined 17 million, which here I thought is nothing more than chump change for Boeing. So we're a little surprised about that. But bear in mind, they lost billions of dollars over the last couple of years. Maybe we could say they should, but nonetheless, anyway, they're gonna have to pay that fine. And there's another fine if they don't comply and in a timely manner. Then there's another $10 million fine that's sitting behind that. But anyway, they all made the official statements that they are going to be in compliance, and so we hopefully we can put a lid on the 737 MAX issue there. So, okay, last slide is again, we want you to keep those cards and letters coming in the form of 15-minute coaching calls. We love to work with people, particularly for the first time. All of those of you out there who have taken advantage of it, pat yourselves on the back. It does take a lot of courage. It's inspiring to me and the other people, and that's why Eric and Diane and Dieter and I love doing this, because we like to hang around courageous people. So if there are no other comments, we definitely want to close this up. We probably lost Diane because I think she has to go to work, meet the crew down in the lobby there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't.
We got a good
so,
discussion going of interest about the flight on the June 21st. So there's definitely some interest in the chat. It's 290. I think you said 297, right? For the
297. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And I put all
the
the
airfare
links also
plus
in
the
chat.
airfare. Okay. And you want to do it. Yeah. And you want to take action quickly, because we are 3 weeks away from that date. And what happens is the closer we get to the date of the flight, the more Southwest raises the want to get away fare.
So the best thing to do,
the cheapest fare,
is to literally just be here on Messenger and then message the page, our page, and that way Captain Ron or me can make sure that we are in contact with you.
Yep. Okay. Hey, thanks, Dieter. Thanks, Diane, and thanks, Eric, and thanks to all of you for keep coming back every week. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Have a great week and keep them flying. Happy landings. Okay, we'll see y'all. Bye-bye.